apologies, Dalbir. We had at least one, didn't we?
Yes, apologies from members. Phil, Nick Evans, Kerry Clare, Paul Hosted, Peter Husband. Apologies from officers, Andy Felton, Sophie Thomason. Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you. We'll note those apologies. Item 2 is voting and actions from the last meeting. Everyone's had the opportunity to have a look at that. So I'm going to take that as read. I think the only thing we need to add to that is I think we didn't record that Alison Ramsey attended on the last meeting on the 28th of September, so we'll correct that. Okay. Right, move on to the main item of business this afternoon then, which is to talk about the schools funding block 2024-25, and we're going to we have a decision to make on transfer of funding from schools block to the high needs block. So I'm going to start off by letting Ross start. Ross Cause, I think you all know, and Ross has got a presentation for us on the Delivering Better Value programme. Ross.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, so for those who don't know me, my name is Ross Cause. I'm the head of SEND and Inclusion at the County Council. And we said when we set up this meeting, which obviously focuses in a little bit on the vote regarding the blocks, that we said we'd also provide an update on the Delivering Better Value programme. The Delivering Better Value programme has done an in-depth what they call diagnostics into some of the reasons for the overspend. 55 local authorities are taking part in the Delivering Better Value programme, which is being run by the DfE. That's in addition to the 20 in the Safety Valve programme, so 75 local authorities who are currently overspending on their high needs block. We're at the point, we're almost at the point of putting in what we call our grant application, where the Department for Education is offering up to £1 million for 1 year to help in terms of a little bit like the change programme that we've been doing previously. And we thought, well, it's a requirement to have stakeholder engagement as we go through, and we have been engaging a number of stakeholders, but we thought we'd share the slides with you of where we've got to so far, and particularly as the focus today is on SEND, that seemed appropriate to do so. So Phil, this will probably take probably about 15, 20 minutes or so to go through some of the slides, just to share where we are in terms of the what they refer to as the diagnostics. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and go through. Okay, and if hopefully that's now in present mode as well, and you should be covering the full screen, shared, and saying Delivering Better Value November 2023.
Yeah, I can see that, and I hope that everyone else can too. If you're not, shout up.
Okay, I'll make a start. Okay, so just a reminder of the of what the provision we have in the county in terms of different types of schools that we have. 194 primary schools, including 9 SEND resource provisions, 36 secondary schools, including 2 resource provision, 2 partnerships, 11 special schools, and so forth. And you can see on the right there just how we build up in terms of levels of provision for children with SEND, from mainstream schools through resource provision up to our maintained special schools and academies, and then independent specialist provision at the top. These are the diagnostic SENDs. So the Department for Education commissioned an organisation called Newton Europe to go through our data, and we've had various case reviews and so forth. And what I'll be sharing is the data that's come out from this piece of work. So first of all, and sorry, I should have said, the reason I haven't circulated these, you'll see in the top left corner it says draft. We're submitting this next Wednesday, and until that submission, these slides are draft, and we aren't circulating them at the moment. That's why we'll be able to circulate them, I think, by next week. So these graphs show you on the left. It shows you the yellow bit, so it shows the caseload increasing from 3,500 in terms of children with EHC plans so 3,500 in 2017 up to 5,300 at the 22-23. Today we stand at 5,800, another 6 months on. It shows also the average unit cost has actually stayed relatively stable over that time. So it's, the expenditure has been growing, particularly in terms of what they refer to as the caseload of children with EHC plans. In terms of where that is spent, the majority of that is spent in our special schools. That's the green bar in the middle. That's to be expected in terms of we have around about 1,600 children in special schools, and special schools are at a higher cost than mainstream school. The next highest is the red block, that's independent specialist provision. So we see higher unit costs there. So we have less children, around about 300 children supporting independent specialist provision, but at a higher unit cost, as I say. And what have we seen on the right? We've seen particular growth more recently in the number of children and young people being supported in mainstream, and actually in post 16 as well. We've got just in terms of our numbers in special schools and mainstream and independent specialist provision. This gives a sense of where we are compared to our statistical neighbours. So we're the yellow one here. So you can see 3 blocks going down. So actually the proportion of children in our special schools has been declining just over recent years, but we're still above the national average, which is that dotted line there. So this is saying we have more children in special schools than elsewhere, which I think members of the Schools Forum will be aware of. And in terms of independent specialist provision, you'll see again with the dotted line here, you can see it's been coming down and we're now below the national average in the number of children in independent specialist provision. Although I do put a caveat on this in terms of it's been increasing again in the last year. The main reasons for placements in independent specialist provision are social, emotional, mental health needs and autism spectrum disorders, ASD. And in terms of the proportion of children in mainstream, that has been increasing. You can see these bars, but again, we're still not quite at the national average. This is a slide regarding EHC needs assessments, which I just put in because this shows the kind of level of insight that that has been shown through this process. People are like to be aware the decision to carry out a needs assessment is a local issue in terms of we know there's a lot of contention regarding it. But what this shows is this was last year, we issued 661 new EHC plans. We have set out that actually we know we have a higher decision not to assess rate than elsewhere. So last year we were at 42% of requests had a decision not to assess, and we know the national average is around 22%. If we applied that 22% rather than what we have, we would see an increase of a further 232 EHC plans being issued each year. If we also applied there are 2 decisions here around EHC plans. One's a decision to assess, the other decision to issue. In Warwickshire, 98% of EHC needs assessments then become EHC plans. Nationally, it's 95%. So again, if we applied the national average of decisions to issue a plan, we actually it reduces it by 29. But we then looked, hang on, my screen's covered here, so I can't quite see. We then, Newton Euro asked the question to say, but if the number of requests was in line with national average, how many would that then be? And actually, you would reduce it by 298. So what this shows you is this 566 figure is in terms of looking at new EHC plans each year. If we were in line with national averages for an average number of requests per head of population, an average number of agreements to assess, and an average number of agreements to issue, we'd actually be at 566. And you can see the biggest kind of change there is the average number of requests per head of population. So the reason why we share this is because we know that 3 years ago we agreed at Schools Forum to actually try to reduce the growth in the issuing of EHC plans. In the last year that has increased, but it's increased in relation to the number of requests for assessment. and which, for whatever reasons, in Warwickshire we see a higher than average number of requests for assessment. We did a number of case reviews. We did a number of case reviews where we looked and we asked, we had schools, parents, officers of the council, health and social care involved in case reviews, looking at children who have been placed particularly in independent and specialist provision and asking the question, were they appropriately placed? And this wasn't about were they appropriately placed at the time of decision making. It was saying, had things been done differently on the journey, could they have been placed elsewhere? We are well aware of, in terms of the statutory framework, where there's parental preference based on consultation responses from schools and so forth. There are criteria by which we make decisions, but the panels that looked at this were asked to put the criteria to one side and say, did we feel that the placements ultimately were appropriate given the journey of that young person? And what this was saying was, it felt that 50% of children in independent specialist provision could have been supported had things been different in mainstream schools, and 57% of children in special schools, of those that we looked at, could have been supported in a resource base, an SEN resource base. There are reasons for that, partly due to the journey and some of the interventions they had, partly due to the availability of places as well. We then have two slides just showing where, in terms of starting at special schools and independent specialist provision, because that's where the highest costs are, where generally those placements start. So in terms of starts in state-funded special schools, you can see that happens at reception year, age 4 to 5 is when most children start in special school. These are generally what we refer to as our generic special schools. So Oakwood, Welcome Hills, Evergreen, Brook and Woodlands. Exeter Grange also starts from that age. And then we see another spike around years 6 to 7. So this is usually around our ASD, SEMH special schools, Discovery, Quest, Venture, and the Warwickshire Academy. And if you look at starts in independent specialist provision, it's a lot later, so we begin to see it again around the age kind of year 6 to year 7 move, but also a little bit later in secondary schools as well, around kind of year 9, year 10. We asked, as part of as part of this process, we asked schools what they felt needed to improve and what they felt the barriers were, and I'll just give you a moment just to read those on the screen. I won't read through each one, and certainly issues of training, communication, capacity and funding, I think, have all been raised in our discussions at Schools Forum previously. We also asked parents, or this slide's got slightly out of sync. I will go back. We asked parents for their views on provision, and parental confidence was one of the biggest reasons why we see that move from mainstream to special. When we looked at this, it was our parent care reform was keen to say parental confidence isn't just about the parents, it's about the support they've had leading up to that. So when we looked at some of the cases in independent specialist provision, for 3 of the cases, we felt it was the ideal setting, and the parental confidence in terms of it. The parental preference was for an independent specialist provision, and all other professionals agreed. In half of the cases, what we were looking at was that actually we would have needed an expansion of resource provision in order, and we could have met parental preference. There was only one case where we felt that actually, in terms of decision making, we might have been able to achieve a different outcome. And the reasons for a lack of parental confidence in terms of what came back to us were these issues. So they felt schools weren't welcoming of reasonable adjustment to their child. Schools not able to provide an adapted curriculum, schools not communicating with parents about how their needs can be met, or schools simply saying that they are unable to meet need. You can see we've spoken to a number of groups there. So we've had bespoke groups. We've also reported backup findings to the Education Partnership Board, SEND Partnership Board as well. And you can see some of the other groups that we've been engaging with. So that's how we've been going through this process. What we will be developing, but I'm afraid I can't share with you today, is the forecast of what that will look like till 2028. It is still being finalised. We have what's called an unmitigated forecast. So if no work was undertaken, what would be the forecast in spending as we go forward? Because ultimately the Delivering Better Value programme is about trying to achieve financial sustainability in the system. Based on what we've provided and forecast and current trends, we are looking at a £50 million gap by 2028 between the budget and the expenditure. Now that's the unmitigated forecast, and what we've been working to get a bit more precise is what we refer to as the mitigated forecast. So obviously we're not going to not do anything. We are going to be putting measures in place, as we have been through the SEND Inclusion Change programme, and we'll continue to through the Delivering Better Value programme. As we do that, we can't share that with you today because we're still agreeing exactly what those figures are, and I'm happy to share those with you once they have been finalised, which will be at next week. But where we currently are is we know that there are in-year pressures, and whatever we do look at is likely to be what's referred to the upper bound. So that's kind of saying we are looking at the moment at pessimistic scenarios. Not at that £50 million gap, but getting close to it. The big thing we're looking to is, I'll share with you in a slide or two, we think one of the big things we can change in our local system is regarding resource provision and trying to calculate what the impact of that might be and which years that may be in. So what this has led to is us promoting 4 work streams, which I'm pleased to say has been supported by the Education Board, our SEND Inclusion Board, and indeed other groups that we've shared this with have been supportive of this. 4 main projects to go forward with next year. This is the 4 to be funded through the Delivering Better Value programme, the £1 million that they're making available. The first is we've had a project called the Inclusion Framework, which we trialled as part of the SEND Inclusion Change programme. That was successful in the trial area with a group of schools of actually continue to support children at SEN support rather than moving to EHC plans, improving parental confidence and improving school confidence and SENCO confidence as well. So we want to roll that out further to the Nuneaton Bedworth area and an area in the Stratford district as well. The second project we want to do taking forward is around workforce development. This is the least developed of these 4 projects, which will really be focused on maintaining placements for children with EHC plans in mainstream by helping to upskill staff. My own view is we've had a few kind of false starts on this type of work over the last few years, but the intention would be to bring together mainstream specialist and county council staff in developing kind of a workforce programme to help upskill staff across all of our schools. The third area, and perhaps the biggest area in terms of actually changing kind of provision, would be to be far more ambitious on our resource provisions. So currently, you saw on the first slide, we have 23 resource provisions within the county. So that's kind of 1 in 10 schools has a resource provision. We've asked ourselves, what would it look like if 1 in 3 schools had a resource base? So that the equivalent, we think, of 83 resource provisions in the county, just creating more of a bridge between mainstream and specialist. This will require schools to be part of that. It will require probably kind of some capital funding as well, and we've talked about possibly altering some of the admissions arrangements to bring more schools on board with hosting resource provisions. And my apologies, I've just noticed the typo there. It should say high needs in their locality. But our point around resource provisions is, at the moment, we've done this really on a district and borough basis, trying to make sure we have resource provisions in each district and borough. What if we looked at that on a locality basis, roughly on the basis of the primary school consortia geographies? And lastly, we need to improve our digital infrastructure as well. That won't per se make any financial sustainability savings for us, but it will. We think we can really improve our communication, which you've seen from the slides is an issue, and also improve the productivity of our services. At that point, thank you for all being very patient with me as I've gone through those slides. Hopefully that was informative and shows some of the work and some of the insights that we've had as part of the diagnostic phase of our Delivering Better Value programme and what we're proposing going forward. And this was an opportunity really just to share that with you, to make sure Schools Forum is informed and to take any questions regarding that as well. So Phil, I will pass back to you should there be any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Ross. Let's see if people have got any questions. There was a lot of information in there. Ideally, we would like to have shared that presentation with you beforehand, but it is very much hot off the press. I know Ross has been working on it right up until the last minute, so we were unable to do that. So if anybody's got any questions on detail, anything they'd like to look at again in terms of those slides, please let us know. Anybody?
I will take that, Phil, as people are keen to move on to the discussion on the report itself. But there you go. Hopefully you feel more informed as a result of that. And regardless of what happens with the vote, I'll be reporting back on the Delivering Better Value programme as we go through the year as well.
And we look forward to seeing that. And we will get a copy of that presentation when it's been fully published, yeah?
Yeah, that should be by next Wednesday. Everything should be signed off. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Ross. Okay, do you want to go on and now talk about the schools block funding report then, please?
I'm actually going to pass to Panima, I think, to introduce that one.
Yeah,
if that's
okay.
I think that's
all right.
But I'm sure there'll be questions for me to answer as we go through it. Yeah. Panima?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Phil. Yes, so I'm looking at agenda item 3 in the Schools Forum papers. I hope everybody else is too, which is the schools block funding report. So if I just start with highlighting the recommendations, please. So the recommendations are that Schools Forum are asked to agree when we come to the voting for the transfer of 0.5% of the schools block funding to the high needs block funding for next financial year, 2024-25. If Schools Forum don't agree to this, then we would ask you to consider a transfer of 0.25%, so exactly half of that, again from the schools block to the high needs block. Just briefly touching on the purpose of the report, really, this section notes that the proposal would move 0.5% in order to address current and projected high needs pressures in the high needs block, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And 1.4 also highlights that in order to be transparent with Schools Forum, that the local authority is considering a disapplication process. So should Schools Forum determine that actually a transfer is not going to be voted for, the local authority does have the right to submit a disapplication to the Secretary of State to request that a transfer is made nonetheless. If I just move to section 2, which is the background. As you'll know, we have been able to implement the hard national funding formula for a number of years now. So we've done that since 2018. We've done that for the first time since 2020-21. In 2021, November, Schools Forum did agree to move 0.5% of the schools block to the high needs block for the following financial year of 22-23. So this request is not unprecedented. What we've done for this new financial year coming is we've done some significant modelling. It's worth bearing in mind at the time we do the modelling, it's all based on indicative information because that is the best information we have to hand. So it is based on the October 2022 census data and on an indicative allocation from DFE. The monetary value of the transfer when we completed the consultation and sent that out to you was 2.255 million. 2.5 just reminds Schools Forum of the various achievements of the current SICP programme, and we can talk more about those in turn if there are any questions about those. One point that we think is relevant is section 2.6. We'd like to note that currently school balance reserves school balances, i.e. reserves, at both maintained schools and academies total approximately 60 million. We are aware that obviously that there is an imbalance of how those reserves are distributed, with some schools having negative reserves, but it is worth noting that that is the value, the total value of school balances across the county council at this point. The other point that I think is really important to note is in 2.7, which is based on our latest data. So we have updated the modelling for more recent information. It doesn't change the figures hugely, but based on the latest data, 185 of our 231 schools would be impacted by a 0.5% transfer. Those that are not impacted because of the minimum funding guarantee, so they are protected. Of those 185 schools, the minimum impact would be just over £1,000, 1032, and the maximum impact being 68,000. However, both of those values represent less than 1% of schools' budgets in those cases. So it can look, and it is an absolute figure of 68,000 maximum, but that is, in terms of percentage, a small amount of the total schools' budget. I'm sure there'll be comments about that later. If I can just talk through the consultation outcomes. We sent obviously the consultation to all schools, and we had a total of only 38 responses. This consisted of 30 primary schools and 8 secondary schools. Important to note that responses from federations or multi-academy trusts were disaggregated to be fair, to reflect the number of schools within that federation or MAT. The consultation asked 3 questions with follow-up questions basically for any no responses, just asking why. So in response to question 1, which was about should a local authority transfer up to 0.5% from schools block to high needs block, we had a total of 38 responses, with 39% responding yes, 8% responding yes to a 0.25 and 53% responding no. So actually, in terms of a simple yes, no, that's quite a close call. In response to question 3, which was should we make that transfer regardless of whether that impacts the hard national funding formula, out of 38 schools, 26% responded yes to 0.5, 18% to 0.25, and again, no was 55%. So again, the no percentage was not a huge majority. Interestingly, when asked if a different value should be transferred, it was quite a significant no of 82% there, actually, from the 38 schools in question. So that is a real quick summary of the schools block funding report, which hopefully you will have all read, and you will have all read the consultation itself, I'm sure. So rather than moving straight to the vote at this stage, Phil, I just propose that the logical thing to do will be to have a discussion about the contents of the report and the high needs block situation.
Okay, thank you. Right, first one is Ricky Ems, please.
Hi, question I have is just, are these figures based on the updated DFE figures after they messed up and have reduced the school funding?
Yes, they are. Steph, I'm just going to ask you to confirm, but yes, to my knowledge, they are. And Brian is nodding as well. Yes, absolutely, Ricky.
The figures in the consultation were not. The figures in this report are.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Michael Cowland, please.
Afternoon, yes, thank you. My understanding is that I'm here as an academy representative, not as a representative of my trust or my own personal opinions. Do you have the responses broken down by maintained school and academy?
We do have that, yes.
Is it? Oh, I haven't seen it in the pack. Is it in the pack? Did I miss it?
No, we wouldn't normally publish the actual individual responses by school.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that. What I mean is, if I'm here representing the views of academies, it would be useful to know what the academy's response was. I
see. Okay. Steph, do you think you could look at that behind the scenes?
Thank you.
I'll look at that now and see if I can get an update in a minute.
Okay, Andy Mason, please.
Hi, yeah, equally, the response by secondaries to primaries would be quite useful. I've obviously gone through the report, and if I can have a few minutes, one of the things we're really concerned of in the secondary sector is that this is a very sort of austere document. It talks about money, but it doesn't talk about impact, and the impact on the schools, and the impact of reducing a significant amount of money specifically from the secondaries. I will declare an interest so everyone's really clear. That 68,000 and 0.75% does relate to our school. However, what we do have is an understanding at this school of what that will do to the provision and SEN provision in this secondary school. One of our concerns is that impact on both the school and the students. And I know someone made a statement earlier about 0.75% is not that great. It is huge. And I'll tell you why it's huge. 83% of our budget goes on staffing, most of it teachers in a classroom. We have no choice but to do that. The majority of the other 17% is to do with core services and other services we have to provide. What we have left probably to make decisions about SEN funding, assessments and other things is less than 2%. So 0.75% is going on for somewhere between 25 and 30% of our discretionary spending in the school. When I say discretionary to decide how we spend it. And a lot of that is spent discretionary wise on SEN provision and provision for behavioural issues and other things. So to say it's only 0.75%, it's not. It's 0.75% of a very small amount that we have discretion over in the school. It's quite huge. There is no way anyone in this school could take out £70,000, which is what it will be when the new funding census goes in, and not have a hugely significant impact on the viability and the SEN provision and the behavioural support in this school. And that is our biggest concern with this. It's not that we don't appreciate there is a problem with the funding of SEN, but when we're moving more SEN provision and trying to, as you said, Ross, investing in provision between mainstream schools and specialist schools, which we have done, then taking the money away that we are doing that with is going to be counterproductive. It's going to lead to more disruption, more behavioural issues, more exclusions and more costs at the centre. And that seems to be the wrong choice. The other thing is we're talking about 0.5 being taken out of the block. There are some schools who will pay nothing. So actually it's not 0.5%, it's a proportion. And we actually pay the highest proportional hit while some people pay nothing. That seems inequitable as well. Unfortunately, it's symptomatic of the way the national funding formula is constructed and the way that SEN funding is constructed as well. But it's not the local authority's fault. It's not a school-led issue. It's just symptomatic of that. The other thing is, the reports talk about more provision being needed in maintained schools. So I cannot see how we can keep more SEN provision or students in maintained schools and take money away from them to still deliver. It's a double whammy, really. It's a double hit. I got some figures. A lot of our SEN provision also relates to behavioural issues, the ability for students to cope in the main school. They unfortunately sometimes take quite a lot of our time. We have had to double our pastoral team in the school in 2 years. We have increased our SEN team to deal with more. We are having to do more EHCP requests, and I've got a summary here where we have 27. We've got 6 waiting, 2 on mediation, 1 refused, and 8 going through. And we've got 6 that we haven't even submitted yet. Again, not criticism of anybody, but the new EHCP assessment route and things, we actually haven't got or can source enough educational psychologist time to actually achieve doing the EHCPs. So quid pro quo, you'll get less EHCPs coming through, requests coming through, because we simply can't get them assessed. Neither can we meet the bar of those at level 5 and level 6, because we haven't got the funds or the provision in place to do 3 assessments of some of those children. So I guess that will automatically reduce the EHCPs, but it will not reduce the needs of those children in our school. It also seems that because there's only a handful of secondaries, they are disproportionately taking the biggest hit in terms of cost, and mainly on levels that are affecting staffing to support the 0.5% transfer. That again seems a little bit inequitable. I've got a million points probably, so apologies. The issue of finance in schools and the background to it is also a key part of this. The government in its funding only said that we would get 1.9% more next year. I've just assessed with our auditors and accountants our income increase and our expenditure increase. I stripped out all exceptional items, capital and that sort of thing. Our expenditure per pupil has gone up this year or last year by 3% more than our income per pupil, and that includes, in our case, growth funding and other areas of supplemental funding. What the government have put out right now in terms of the ORPU rates may or may not stack up, but that figure is actually a reduction to us unless they roll in the mainstream additional grants. That is slightly unclear. They've said they'll do it, but then they've announced a headline rate that doesn't seem to give us a net increase. I might be wrong on that, but either way, there is not a generous increase coming through at core level for GAG funding and ORPU levels. If we then take out another 0.75% of that 1.9, that leaves us with very little increase, but certainly we know we've got rising staff costs, we will have rising contract costs, we've got rising energy costs. It's going to have a huge impact. And I suppose one of the last questions, and I did get this passed to me by other academies, if the actions of the local authority put some of our schools into a deficit position, revenue-wise, what's their responsibility for the academies who are limited companies who then can't pay their way? And that is a serious issue. There are schools, and I've looked at some of the primaries because some of the primaries asked me to have a look. There are some primary schools who are currently in deficit reduction plans who would be hit for some of this money. They are on that list. They're not protected because they're above the minimum funding guarantee. How do we take money away from schools that already can't pay their way? I appreciate there's a problem at the centre of the funding. I appreciate we're all trying to do the right thing, but taking away money, whether it be a small amount or a significant amount, from those people providing at the coalface to reduce those kids moving into specialist provision, which is even more expensive, seems to be a retrograde and the wrong step. I know that's probably not what people want to hear, because I know there's a problem at the centre and I know there's a big deficit. But that's about lobbying government and central government to actually start paying Warwickshire the right amount of money now, not trying to make up for the deficiencies in their funding model. That's it, really. Sorry.
No, fine, Andy. We do want to hear everybody's reasons and everybody's stories. A couple of things. I'll bring Nikki in a minute. Pranima, could you just the subject of schools not having to contribute everything because of minimum funding guarantee? I'm not sure whether it's you or whether it's Brian. Could you just explain the reasons for the minimum funding guarantee, please?
I will pass that question over to Brian. He's far closer to that than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me a second. Yeah. Obviously, when the funding formula is run with all the data, the minimum funding guarantee kicks in if they're going to get if individual schools will get less than a set rate that the government sets. For those schools with falling numbers and changes in their makeup of their school, that feeds into the national funding formula. If they've reduced below this level, then we don't count that when we look at this, look at sharing out this 0.5% 0.5% transfer. It's as simple as that. We just take those out the equation. So in effect, if we shared it over all schools, then it would, everyone's amounts would be slightly lower. But because we exclude those that are below the minimum funding guarantee, because we can't reduce their money, their funding, then it does kick in. Thanks, Steph.
Okay, Brian,
can I just add to that, Brian?
Yeah,
so it's slightly more than that. So any school that we put through the formula, having taken this 5%, who also falls below that threshold, will also then become protected by the minimum funding guarantee.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, yeah, thanks. And the other thing I think that was just raised, Ross, the issue of Ed Sykes was mentioned by Andy, and I've heard this from some other schools as well. Is there a particular issue, and is that acting as a restriction on schools' abilities to work through EHCPs, as far as you're aware?
So there is an issue with education psychologists capacity at the moment. What we're saying is we are looking at, we usually expect a graduate response, including education psychologists. We're beginning to look at where you can't get that capacity. Any school that's raised that with me, I've said just explain what the situation is, and we'll look sympathetically at that, and any other external advice that you've used, for example, as a specialist teacher or anything else that you've used. So that shouldn't be a barrier. I mentioned in the slides as well, but didn't go into it. We've looked particularly at our decisions to assess, and we expect to be issuing more EHC plans if we bring down actually the decisions not to assess, because we know that's creating a friction. What that does mean, though, is that will mean more EHC plans, and that is more spend from the high needs block, which is what we're talking about here. So the cost then moves to the high needs block in order to pay for that. The cost moves to the high needs block to carry out that statutory assessment if we are issuing more EHC plans. So all of those things actually just put more pressure on the high needs block.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I forgot what I was going to say now, so I'll come on to Nikki.
Thank you. Hi, yeah. So being a School Forums member for quite a few years now, we've been in this position many years, haven't we? And last year, feels very different to this year. So last year I did vote against the 0.5 and the 0.25. And my reasons last year was because the difference in heads that were saying no was really high, whereas I found it harder this time because actually more heads, this 20 to 15, which is only 5 difference, more heads have voted for that money to be put across. And we've got to ask ourselves, why is that? What's different? And I think for me, I was at the Warwickshire Partnership Board meeting last week with all the consortium heads in that meeting, and we heard from Ross the Delivery Better Value programme. And when we were in Schools Forum last time in this meeting, what we kept asking is, can we have the information of how that money will be spent? And we weren't really getting that last year. But I think, Ross, credit to yourself, you've just given us a report that really shows 4 clear aims. And the heads in the Warwickshire Partnership Board meeting last week felt very positive about what they were and the difference they are going to make. We all know our budgets would send, are struggling, but we have to change. We have to do something a bit different. And I think as a local authority, we've got really clear aims now of what they are and the difference they may be able to make. So I think if this consultation had gone out after all heads seeing what these aims are, I wonder if we would have had more of an uptake as well and more yeses, whereas I think in the past we've had more no's, because as head teacher, we weren't sure where that funding was going to be, what the priorities are, but I think we've got that. So for me as a School Forum member, I'm looking at it in that perspective. We've got the information of how that money is going to be spent. Everything that was just said previous to me, yet there's so many other concerns there. We are worried about our school budgets, we are worried about our staffing, our recruitment, our retainment, but do we need to make it put something into a change with clear priorities that may make a difference. And because of the high count with yeses, that is a big difference to what we've seen in the school forum before. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. And I think it is worth noting, Panima touched on it when she went through the report, that out of what is it, 230 something schools, we had responses from 38, which is less, a consultation response of less than 20%. So, you know, even if a majority of those have voted no, in terms of the family of schools, it's still a small number of objections. And I do take Andy's point. I'm a governor of one of those schools that's struggling with a deficit, which is going to lose a bit of its school budget, and I know that is going to make our task even more difficult. But again, this isn't something that's being done to us from the centre. The whole issue of whereas in a sense, you know, we've got to find a different way of dealing with this conundrum of a really high and increasing level of needs in school, which we all know, you know, the professionals, certainly more than me as a governor, but I've come across it as well, that is having an effect on behaviour. It's having an effect on exclusions. So we do need to be able to support these children and get them EHCPs, and then get that funding via the EHCPs to try and keep them in mainstream. So and we've got a situation. We've got a problem with the high needs block. It's going on year. We've got to try and think of ways of doing this differently. Is this a way of doing it differently? From what Ross's presentation told us earlier, yeah, this is a possible way of doing it differently. Panima.
Thanks, Phil. I was just going to reflect on a couple of points, and you've touched on them actually. So, in terms of the voting, thank you for recognising the low number of votes. And arguably, if more schools were very passionate about not having 0.5% of their budget transferred, I'd like to think they would have responded to the consultation to say a firm no, and that didn't take place. So I just wanted to raise that. The second point was just about lobbying, actually. Please don't think for a second that the lobbying is not taking place. It absolutely is, by the local authority and by councillors and by officers. That is absolutely taking place. But what we obviously can't do is just wait for that lobbying to have an impact, because of various political reasons, we don't know when that impact is going to happen. And in the meantime, we need to do something now for next financial year. And yes, we are proposing, as Phil rightly says, something different that does have an impact on school budgets. But currently, the level of deficit that the high needs block is incurring is having an impact on the local authority, and is potentially going to have an impact on the services the local authority will be able to offer schools. Johnny, I just wonder if I can bring you in at this point, because we had a conversation yesterday about potentially what not transferring this level of money could mean for the services we offer as a local authority to schools. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Panima. I think I'm happy to talk about that, but I think for colleagues that have got their hands up, I think I'd like to just hear the feedback first and then speak afterwards. I think this is a very difficult topic.
I'll come to them, and then I'll come back to you. If we could do that,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, Michael Cowland.
Thank you, Phil. Sorry, I was scribbling some things down as you were talking. I don't think you should take the low vote as agreement. I think the low vote is probably more because head teachers are extremely busy, and they're extremely busy because they haven't got enough people or enough money or enough supply staff or enough anything to manage the very difficult situations head teachers find. I'm really pleased to hear that there is some lobbying going on. We're managers, we have to manage with the money that we've got, but there are councillors around the table, and we're talking to the county council, and I hope there is some significant lobbying going on, because we all know that education is underfunded. But no, I think the point there is don't take a low response as agreement. Take it as an indication of how blooming busy everybody is. Phil, you're quite right about alternatives, and I've done a quick rough and ready sum to see how much this would cost our trust, and it's about £120,000 across our 17 academies in Warwickshire. If I was to say to our 17 heads in Warwickshire, would you like to spend 120? Would you like us as a trust to spend £120,000 on high needs? Then they would vote for that. They would vote to keep the £120,000 within us to directly address behaviour and high needs and SEND and all the other things that are big priorities within our trust. That's a different way of dealing with it, I think, and that's a different way that Academy Trust can deal with it, rather than looking at £2,000 here and there. 30 or no, I think it's about £60,000 for Harris. I think if we were to spend this on a trust-wide inclusion project, I think that's what our heads would vote for. Lesson for me in this, I haven't promoted this consultation around our trust. I think if I had have done, and I had have given them that option, spend £120,000 on inclusion in our trust or give it to the local authority, I think you'd have 17 more no's on your table.
Okay, thank you. Right, Andy Mason, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. We can't read statistics and a low vote as justifying either a yes or a no. I mean, it's down to people's actual vote. I just want to say as well, what was, in terms of what I was looking at, the impact on individual schools has to be represented alongside. So if it did go out wider for people to look at, the document needs to represent what will be lost in schools as well. I think there are two separate issues. Unfortunately, they come together as this one issue. We totally support the idea of doing things different, and if the money's there, that's fine. But it should be to complement what goes on in schools currently. If you argue that, oh, it's great, we do something different and we do this and this has an effect on the EHCPs at the centre, you can't ignore taking the money away and what impact that will have on SEND provision and EHCPs in the maintained schools. What I'm maybe positively arguing for is exactly what you put in your presentations, and that is maintaining placements in the mainstream schools. And I can't square taking money away with that initiative. I know that it's difficult for people, but it cannot help the situation. It will only shift where the EHCPs and the issue of SEND provision goes. And if your stated aim is to keep it in maintained schools, then the money needs to stay in the maintained schools to support what we're trying to do. That doesn't mean I'm not supportive of doing other things, but the reality is, as a group, the local authority, the schools, the academies, we don't have enough resource to do it all. But it would be wrong to do away with some of the good practice that's going on currently and the improving practice and the improving provision, in my view, in some of the schools currently. To put a brake on that, I think, is the wrong decision. That is just my view of what I see some very dedicated professionals doing. And one of the things, if we make it harder in schools when they are dealing with a huge number of societal problems, and when I look at my concerns that have come in our school in just one half term, they are huge. The pressure that you will drive into the staffing will mean that I will start to see mental health issues, people going off, and it will drive an even more significant pressure into those professionals that are on this, certainly on this side, trying to do the best for those kids who take a reasonable amount more time and effort and empathy and care than those kids that just get on and manage fine in the school. I just, that's, and if we are going to represent this at council level as well, then I think the balance should be, we are going to do this is what we want to do, but you can't not show the knock-on effect to schools as well. There has to be an impact. Otherwise, we'd be saying it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying it doesn't matter. And in terms of impact, I think the officers have done their best to identify what the impact is on each individual school, and we've got that information. How that
financial impact.
How that appears in each school in terms of impact, in terms of staffing, in terms of whatever, is up to the heads and governors to decide, isn't it? And we can't decide that for them. People will make individual decisions about their schools as to how they manage their budgetary impacts, won't they?
I can't agree that if you're taking a decision that has an impact on schools, just devolving the impact of that decision to schools and not know what impact that would have is not right. You have to, you know, and this is not a criticism of, you know, Ross or anyone else. I know Ross for ages. I know, you know, where his heart is and stuff. It's just simply, you can't shift the money and not recognise there's an issue. And so, yes, of course, we will have to deal with it. But when making that decision, everyone should be clear what the impact is, both positively and negatively, and on who, when they make that call. It's not a call we want to make. But
no, I agree, and none of us wants to be in this
that's the reality,
position.
but it's not just about devolving the problem of less finance to the schools. That's not fair. It has to be that there's a recognition that that will have an impact.
Yeah, and I think we all acknowledge that. I think we all acknowledge that finances are tight. There is lobbying going on. I know the county council is doing that, and I'm sure Councillor Cole is listening very closely to this discussion. There's things going on through, I think there's an F40 group which Warwickshire is part of in terms of school funding, I advise everybody you can lobby your member of parliament to tell them the details of what impact this is having on the schools, because that's the only way it's going to change. We will carry on. County council, people with influence, will carry on doing that. But as Pennyma's quite logically said a few minutes ago, we can't wait for that to happen. We've got to try and do something that's going to help us out for the next financial year. And I think it's worth saying, I think not to preempt what Johnny's going to say in a few minutes, but you've all read in the press about the impact of the current situation on local authorities. Many local authorities are getting to the point where they are just down to the point of providing statutory services only, of which fortunately education is one. But we know that some local authorities, and there's one very close to here, have actually gone over the edge into financial crash and having commissioners put in. And they won't be the first. They're not the first, and they certainly won't be the last. There are a number of local authorities on the edge. Warwickshire, I think, has been fortunate in the way it's managed its finances over the last few years. But I know I'm not as close to it these days as I used to be. But I think things are also getting very tight, and I think perhaps that's what Johnny's going to talk to us in a bit. Right, I'm going to move on. Blake Francis, please.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Michael and Andy have said, because I completely agree. The response rate is really what I'm concerned about, and the local authority have done this recently with the FAP consultation as well, where they took non-responses as positive responses, and I find that quite staggering, really, that the local authority are just kind of, well, that must be good then. But actually, I'd be asking myself a question if I did a survey and I got such a poor response rate around how have I communicated that message, and is that sinking in, and is that really clear? Is the messaging right? Is the forum right? Or is it just leadership via email? We've sent the email, so now we presume everybody's read it and everybody's had time to read it and everybody's fully understood it. So I would encourage the local authority really to think carefully about that, because for me, that's the response rate is really poor, and that again echoes what Michael was saying about how it is. Do you really understand what it's like to be a leader in a school, in a busy secondary school, for example, and in a primary school where you've just got so many emails coming in about so many different things that you literally haven't even got time to read everything and to fully understand everything? So you've got to have your priority list of just doing your day-to-day stuff first and getting everything that you need sorted before you can then get on to even thinking about reading stuff from the local authority. And then the other thing, like, clearly, Phil, you've never sent an email, or you haven't sent an email to your local MP recently, because the bland responses that you get back and the lack of support from your MP and the kind of the support of the just sticking to the party line is just, I've given up, because I've never had a response which has ever yielded anything, despite sending many. And then the kind of the local authority are talking about the finances and the the issues around balancing the budget. So you can come to schools and ask for money. So we kind of give a top slice of our percentage, but who do we go to when we've got no money left? You know, there's nobody to go to there for us. So I just, you know, would hope that the comments that have been made today have been listened to, and hopefully some reflection.
Yeah, thanks, Blake, for your points. I have very good engagement with my member of parliament. He always responds to me. Yeah, sometimes there's a party line thing, but I do get engagement, and the conversations I've had with him are very positive, and that's despite the fact that's despite the fact that I actually stood against him 6 years ago. So he knows that I'm never going to vote for him, but he does respond to me very, very positively. Right, okay, Nikki.
Help her unmuted. I was just going to say, with Andy's point about what is the impact? I was just going to ask Panima, when we transferred the 0.5 a few years ago for the SEND Change programme, when everyone was in agreement with that, did we get any feedback from heads or schools, positive or negative, after that move? Is that something that happens or not?
Gosh, Nikki, I'm going to say not that I am aware of, no, okay. But I will turn to my colleagues to see if they have any further information that I might not.
Okay, just a thought.
Okay, right, Councillor Kerr.
Okay, so being the only politician in the room, nearly, Phil obviously is the other. I just want to make a few
down these days, Cam.
Yeah. Can you see the knives in the back of my back? So I am going to make a few observations. I've been the portfolio holder for 18 months, and I've pretty much tried to engage with every head teacher, every trust, every academy. What I keep saying is that we're a family of schools, regardless of whatever trust you're accountable to. Now, recognising all the things that you're saying, and nobody, Andy, nobody at any point throughout this, any of this, consultation period is saying anybody's got it easy, because nobody has got it easy in terms of their finances. Nobody, not at your level and not at my level. My level, you know, if you think you've got problems, you should come and see my inbox. But, you know, what I'm trying to say to you all, let's just talk about the consultation. And I'm sorry, Blake, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Not that we want to, the amount of meetings I've been to talking about fair access protocol is, I've lost count how many times we went through the fair access protocol, the amount of boards we discussed the fair access protocol, the head teachers forum, the head teachers conference that we brought it to. So I can't understand in terms of the FAP in particular, why you're saying we didn't engage or we haven't consulted, because, you know, we even said we'll take a nil. We absolutely understand that your inboxes are equally as full. We understand that you're busy, that you've got a whole host of things that land with you every single day as soon as a kid walks through that school. Get that. But equally, there are some things that the LA need you to engage. This was one, and the fact was another. And the fact that nobody is saying that they haven't got time, please make a little bit of time for these sorts of things, because they do impact you. They impact you more than they impact me, because, you know, at the end of the day, there is a kid at the end of the line in terms of fair access protocol that is impacted by the decision we and you are making. And that's difficult to translate to a parent. You're all at leadership positions, as am I. But I'm trying to balance actually what you're going through and what I need to go through and put forward. So, Blake, I know you're going to come back at me, which is fine, but it's not a politician having a go at you. I'm trying to get some equilibrium here. And in terms of lobbying, just to let you know, all of the Warwickshire MPs have written to me, and I had written to them to lobby them to sign be one of the signatures on the F40 group. They've all come back to me and said they've signed it. I'm meeting with the minister on Monday in terms of how I can try and persuade more so the Jeremy Hunt, the Minister Jeremy Hunt, to put something, and hopefully he has put something in the autumn statement. I still don't know if he will or won't. So it's not as if the lobbying hasn't been done. It's been done. And I want to put that on the record that, you know, every moment we get a chance to be in front of a minister, we're lobbying. We are lobbying. And, you know, I've asked Ross again to do a single pager around resource provision for me. You know, if we increase resource provision in schools, what would the impact be? How much is it going to cost? Who will it save? All the questions that you've basically raised around finance here, I've already asked him. So I don't want you to feel that, oh, there's a politician on the screen and she's just listening and it's going through one ear and it's coming out the other. That's not what's happening. I'm hearing what you're saying and I feel your pain. But equally, I do the lobbying and there is a point where we need to balance things out between us. Now, I'm not going to tell you which way to vote. That's up to you. Completely up to you. But I do also understand that there is a systematic problem. We've all agreed that needs sorting. And yeah, quite frankly, I don't care what the north, east or south of England is doing. I care about what's happening in Warwickshire, and that's my priority. So I'm going to get off my pedestal, but I just wanted to give you the assurance that we are listening to you. We hear what you're saying and we know it's difficult, but equally, we've got the same pressures, slightly in a different way, but in the LA. Okay, coming off, and I'm going to go on mute. And I'll get ready, Phil. All the hands are going up now.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Well, I'll let Blake come back, but I'm not going to let this go into a debate about consultation about FAP. We're focusing on this issue, but I will let Blake respond.
I'll just say I'll apologise to Cam because I wasn't around last year, so I'm not sure what the communication around FAP was because I wasn't in the local authority last year. So if that was communicated prior to that in a clearer way, then fair enough, Cam.
All right, thanks for that, Blake. Right, Rebecca Harrison, please.
Hi. I'm wondering if some of the low numbers was due to the point that you've made about if we all say no, you still might be going to go to disapplication. So I'm wondering if some of the schools are thinking, what's the point in me replying if they're going to do it anyway? I think my other point that Nikki said, I've been school forum for quite a while now, and I remember when we did say yes, and I think since then I've asked the same thing, and I'll ask again. How many schools are currently in deficit? How many schools will go into deficit because of this? Because I know the schools that I'm working in are all in deficit, and this isn't going to help. The grant that the government has given us for the teacher pay award does not cover that teacher pay award. I'm having to strip things from everywhere. I understand that they're working really, really hard, but I know I'm investing £6,000 on every child who needs a plan. Like Andy said, I've got a lot of children here who need additional support. We've got children where we're going through plans. We're still waiting to find out what those figures are for what funding we're going to get. We're having to invest. It's really hard recruitment. So we're paying over what we're going to get anyway because we're having to go through agencies. I appreciate, Cam, everything that you've just said. I can see how passionate you are, and it's great to hear you on our side, really fighting our corners. But it does need to go back ultimately to the government to say the funding formulas you are giving do not work. It is not sustainable. All these schools are going to be going into a deficit. It's just not sustainable. And me giving you money to rectify your deficit is making me in deficit. So how does that help anybody?
Okay, thank you. Andy, go on. You're on mute, Andy.
Yeah, I've got it. Hi, Cam. I hope you didn't feel I was throwing knives in your back. I've only thrown roses because you are absolutely supportive and we totally appreciate what you're trying to do. And I think all the comments that we made today are about a supportive and collective approach going forward. It's not a criticism of anybody. We all find ourselves in exactly the same position. And so we do appreciate that you've got a tough job at government level as the F40 group. I know, talking to Ross from years ago, this F40 thing's been going on for donkey's years. You have a really difficult position. Your council position is incredibly difficult. I think we all appreciate that. But there still has to be a recognition of the impact somewhere, of the decisions that are taken. So, we didn't want you to feel unloved or unappreciated. We know that you're doing it for the right reasons.
It's fine, Andy. Politicians understand we're hated. It's fine.
No, not at all. You're not.
Yeah,
It's me.
broad shoulders and thick skins. That's right, Cam, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe one or two down in, Westminster, maybe, but they're responsible for the big decisions.
Okay,
Anyway,
Rose
thank
Gunn,
you.
please.
Hi, I think I want to echo, I'm sorry if I've got it wrong, Rachel's exact point. We're seeing aspects of SEN exactly the same, that and I'm on the same page, that I understand the bigger need. I understand that there's an agenda that's way bigger than just me as a school, bigger than a local authority. It's a national agenda, and the impact of SEN. And when we're sitting in a situation where we, under the new matrix for SEN, 4 children with the HCPs that joined us from nurseries, and we haven't had the funding for 3 of them because we're in a debate over who supplies the IEP, costed IEP. Even though the previous nursery submitted it, that's not been accepted, and only when I realised I haven't received anything, I'm now in a situation where we're nearly a term down the line and it's not going to be back paid, and I'm not in a position where I can fund that. So I have parents up in arms saying, my child's meant to have £20,000, where's the adult? There's a lot of misunderstanding from a parent point of view, which puts additional pressure on. There's a lot of misunderstanding from staff, as much as I try to explain, because they're saying, like, well, I've got 4 HCPs, how come I haven't got an extra adult? And this is almost bad timing to get that email yesterday saying that we've been, the government has overestimated what it's giving, and they need to recoup, what was it, £334 million of money, and every school will have to pay, I think in our case, £37 per child. It feels like really bad timing, that email yesterday, thinking about sort of where we are financially as schools, all of us.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Rose. Ross, were you indicating?
What we've tried to remember is always be fair regarding the funding. So, Rose, I appreciate there might be a costed IP going back and forth, but we've always backdated all the funding to the date when the EHC PAM was issued. We've recently, working with schools, we've looked at our top-up funding matrix. We're trying to get away from the costed IEPs and give kind of fairer funding, which is using this pot, which is the top-up funding. That's where this comes from. So, in terms of what we've tried to use in terms of the funding, we have been trying and rolling out, particularly more recently, to actually funnel that funding as far as we can into mainstream schools to maintain placements through the top-up funding matrix and be fair with schools. And certainly when I've conversations with heads, we try and work out any school that may be in a financial deficit. And Rebecca, others will be able to say how many are in a financial deficit, but any that are concerned regarding SEN funding, we go through the children with the HC plans we have, we go through how they work, we have SEND audits and so forth. We try to work through to make sure that SEND isn't the reason why schools may be in that position. But I guess I have to make the point that anything that comes through top-up funding, anything that comes through an EHC plan, this is the pot that it comes from.
It's very tricky from the point of view of, so our finance officer says we're getting nothing because she hasn't got any information, and this is how we were alerted of our 5 new HCPs, nothing for 4 of them because of a debate over, as you say, the backwards and forwards of costed IEPs. It's not making sense to me at the moment. I'm finding it very difficult to follow.
Okay, but that'll be a cash flow issue, because we've always been, from whenever the date of the EHC plan was agreed, that's when we provide the funding. So I just wanted to be clear about that. That's always been our policy, and we continue to do that.
Our difficulty is we haven't given those children the extra adults, because without that money, I can't spend what I haven't got yet. So those children are a term down the line without without that. And I know that my experience is not the only one. It's just, I absolutely get it. I'm not a politician for very good reason. I don't envy Cam your job at all. It's not an easy job. It's just, you know, all of us are sitting here thinking about individual children and the impact on them. And, you know, I hear Andy and I see 2 children you have to, sorry, 2 teachers you have to slash to afford that sort of cost is massive. It's really, really, you know, tough times. It's not a strong enough word for it. It's really tough times for people at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, there was a couple of questions asked fairly towards the start of the meeting in terms of the breakdown of the consultation responses by type of school and by stage. Have we got responses to that information yet?
We have, Phil. Steph has kindly put it in the chat. I don't know if people have had a chance to look at it, or if you would like me to attempt to just give the high level information that it's telling us, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so if we do it question by question, so the first question, would you agree to up to a 0.5% transfer from schools block to high needs block if sufficient funding were available without affecting the hard national funding formula to schools? So the answer is broken down by academy and maintained schools. So 10 academies voted no and 9 academies voted yes, 8 for 0.5% and 1 for 0.25%. From a maintained schools perspective, 10 maintained schools voted no. 9 also voted yes. That's split by 7 voting for 0.5% and 2 voting for 0.25%. If I can just explain that in relation to primary schools and secondary schools. So the same question, of that, the primary schools, 16 primary schools voted no, and 17 primary schools voted yes. That's broken down by 15 schools voting yes for 0.5% and 2 primary schools voting yes for 0.25%. On secondary schools, 4 secondary schools voted no, 1 secondary school voted yes, and that was for 0.25%. Is that clear? Does anyone need anything repeated before
Thank you very much. I think
two?
Rebecca's been trying to read the detail in the chat by the fact she had her nose about 3 inches away from the screen. So come on then, Rebecca.
I'm just wondering, you know, on the answers that you say, as I seem to remember it, you could answer yes, I can do a 5%, and yes, I can do a 0.25%. I'm just wondering if we're doubling numbers. You know, when you're just thinking, we're saying that 17 people have said yes in total for a 0.5.
No, we're not doubling numbers.
Okay,
no.
I was just checking.
Only because it all reconciles to 38. So I can see that all the totals reconcile to, sorry, it's the accountant in me coming out. All the numbers balance to 38. So I'm confident that there is no double counting.
Thanks.
Nima, I was going to make the accountant comment. I expect the accountants get their figures right.
Is everyone clear on that? Do you want me to move to question 2?
Yes, go on then.
Okay, so question 2 was the proposal of up to a 0.5%, even if it does affect the hard national funding formula factors. So on this, if I start with the academy and the breakdown between academy and maintained, so 9 academy schools voted no, 10 academy schools voted yes, 6 for 0.5%, and 4 for 0.25%. From a maintained schools perspective, 12 maintained schools voted no, with 7 voting yes, 0.5 being 4 of those and 0.25 being for 3 of those schools. Split between primary and secondary schools then. Primary schools voted, 17 schools voted no, with 16 schools voting yes, 10 for 0.5%, 6 for 0.25%. For secondary schools, 4 voted no, 1 school voted yes, and that was 0.25%.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right. The question, oh, sorry.
Jake, no, go on. No, go on.
The last question, do you think a transfer of a different percentage should be proposed? 13 academies voted no, 18 academies voted, sorry, 18 maintained schools voted no, 6 academies voted yes, and only 1 maintained school voted yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Penema. Right. I think it's time to bring Johnny in We've run out of speakers and commentary from the floor. So, Johnny, would you like to speak to us, please?
Thanks, Phil. I mean, just a massive thanks to everyone around this virtual meeting. Actually, I think this has been a really good professional discussion, and a really respectful one. So this is really difficult, isn't it? I mean, how can a school vote to take £67,000 out of their budget when they've got their own children to look after or to look at, and their staffing to think about? And then, you know, I heard Michael talk about the MAT and what 120 grand could do within there, and it's really difficult for me to put a counter argument to that and to say, you know, yeah, it's difficult. And I totally understand where you're coming from. You do have a duty to your own schools as well, and your own children, and the ones that are in there. And I think there's been a really good understanding here about the role of the LA as well. And you know, none of this is personal, and I don't think there'll be any relationship breakdowns, whatever the outcome of these discussions are. I suppose from our point of view, our school, if you like, is the 5,000 kids across Warwickshire that have EHC plans, and the ones that continue to come through, and to try and have the ability to cater for them across Warwickshire, which is our unique position. I mean, the money that comes into the high needs block all goes back to schools, because it's all in top-up funding. It all funds resource provision, and so it is coming back to schools. It's not something you're giving away that you'll never see. However, some individual schools are impacted more than others, and absolutely that does need to be recognised. We're under pressure, obviously, to make savings, to cut things down. Ross has shown you the delivering better value. I think I'd be less inclined to support moving any money if I didn't know where it was going or what it was actually doing. And I think hopefully what we've been able to try and show is that through the Delivering Better Value programme is exactly what it's doing, where it's going, and how it's working. Ultimately, and you're all school leaders as well, if you're faced with a deficit budget, or if you're faced with having to make savings, you have to make tough decisions. We're in a position where we need to have to make some of those decisions to make some savings on a rapidly overspent block. The only recourse for us would be to have to look at non-statutory duties, but some of those non-statutory duties impact all schools in Warwickshire and all children. So, for example, things like the specialist teaching service, or things that we do outreach with the EP service. This is a really tough call. This is a really tough decision. Obviously, we're here to put our side for it. We want, that's where the 2.5 million goes. That's what it will be funding, the continuing support, which you will get back, and hopefully with a good service, a good SEND service, and one that's working with you. But I do understand the pressures. Just trying to be honest about where we're at, because we're told we have to make savings. We're under pressure from the government. The council has a shadow fund to cover the high needs block deficit as well, which means that money can't be used for anything else. We're all just generally trying to do our best around here, and so yeah, like I say, it's really difficult. I don't want to come out straight with a propaganda pitch to try and say, can you vote yes? Obviously, this is what we're here for, but I find this a really, really difficult conversation to have, because for some schools, there'll be a higher impact. For some schools, there might be a lesser impact. Nonetheless, the wider picture is the impact is on the young people that live across the whole of Warwickshire. What do we do about it? I genuinely don't know. We know we need more funding from government. And I think whether Schools Forum votes yes or no, the same message was that we still know we're underfunded. This vote isn't going to give us the funds that we need. It's just going to make it slightly less worse, but actually still be able to do things that we're still planning to try and want to do. We're spending a lot of money as well. We're putting a lot of additional funds that within the council as well. We've expanded teams we're doing more outreach work. We're all generally trying our best. Exclusions are going up across the county as well. I don't know why that is. We have to look into that together as a collective as to why that's happening. That's adding to expenditure in the system. So there are things we can explore about being creative and preventative and doing those kind of things. But that's ultimately where this money is going as well, that you're potentially voting on now. And so that's kind of what I wanted to say there. But like I say, I think the conversations have been really respectful. I really empathise. I totally understand. Being a head teacher, a school leader in the current climate is absolutely, nobody understands the intensity of being a head teacher. Nobody, unless you are a head teacher. Everyone's got a view about how schools should be, about hours that teachers work, or about how you should teach, or how you should speak to kids, or how you should do this or that. But no one knows the intensity that you go in every day and you have to look after a range of children with a range of emotions, with a range of backgrounds. You have to develop your workforce that's could be lower morale, turnover of staff, and all the rest of it. So we do hear you, and this isn't just a straight pitch to say, can we have more money, please, to carry on doing what we're doing, and and help us get out of a hole. I hope that's totally not been any kind of the ethos that you've picked up here. But it's the system we're in. It's the only recourse that we have, is to ask you for this money to support what we're doing, and we've tried as much as we can to show you what that is going on. You've got Ross's, but people have been very supportive of Ross actually as a new leader in the county, and what he's trying to do, improving communication with schools for knowing exactly where your money is going, or where this money is going. Hopefully we'll continue that journey together. And so that's it really. That's kind of what I wanted to chip in there. But if we do end up having to reduce services, that will impact your school, and it will impact everybody. That's really unfortunately where we are. What a horrible position to be in, because we're all professionals that want to do right by children and right by the kids, to give them the best chances. So I'm just going to end by saying, thanks for the debate, and you have to vote the way that you vote, and we'll go with the next steps. If there's any questions,
thanks for that, Johnny.
To take that. Yeah, and thanks, Phil.
Okay, are there any further comments before? Okay, Andy.
Just a quick one, and the reason I asked it, there's a really big concern in the secondary sector, and that came through in the 4-1 vote, sort of secondary. There is a real concern there. We have protected schools with the minimum funding guarantee. What we haven't done is protect the other end with any kind of capped system, where at least if we vote to put this through, that the pain is at least minimised a little bit. I do realise that will generate less for the support for the higher needs, but that was one of the things I did raise at the last meeting. Is it is really hard. There isn't a single bone in my body would want to vote against this, but I also know that voting for it would directly impact kids that I know and see, and that is an invidious position to be in. But it's that concern. I think there's a feeling that there's a minority of the big schools, and I know that we get more money, are taking the disproportionate amount of money to pay for this. And there are some significant big secondary schools on that list who are paying nothing. And that's just symptomatic of a formulaic approach to the national funding formula. That can't be right. The people who are dealing with most of the issues are actually the ones who are going to cough up the most money. And that doesn't seem right either. But hey, that's just my take on the secondary sector, which is what some people and colleagues asked me to raise. I'm only the messenger, but that's. I think there is a definite, distinct feeling in the secondary sector that this would be quite considerable in terms of impact.
Great, thank you, Andy. Michael.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, thanks, Johnny. That was very heartfelt. I suppose I thought very carefully before saying what I said, because I didn't want to appear like a NIMBY. I didn't want people around the table to think, oh, all he cares about is the 5,000 children in his trust, and he's got no appreciation of the wider county, because that couldn't be further from the truth. And Councillor Kerr and I have spoken a few times about how we can contribute more widely to education across the county. But I suppose my theory was, if I'm feeling this way, then so would others be. And if I'm thinking, well, we could, I know, Johnny, you say that it would reduce services for the children if this money wasn't spent within the local authority, but that's our argument too, I suppose, is that it would reduce services for the children within our schools and academies too. So yeah, it's a very difficult vote, as you rightly say, Johnny. But no, I didn't want to come across as though I only care about the 5,000 children in our trust, because that couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay,
I appreciate
thank
that,
you.
Michael. No, I really didn't. I don't think that at all. What I was trying to say is I understand the positions that you're in as school leaders with the children that are in your school, and having to make a decision like this and being asked to say, think about the greater good. I just don't think it's a straight binary conversation that way, and it's a non-judgmental. So I don't think that a vote against is necessarily you thinking, or anybody thinking, that's because we don't care about the wider good. This is a real difficult position for us all to be in. I guess I'm just trying to put forward the arguments that I think the money comes back to the schools anyway, because it's your money. We're trying to, make sure that you get the service, and we're trying to do more outreach. So, but I appreciate that. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, I'm sure everyone's going to vote with the best of motives. I think by the tone of the discussion and all the discussions that we have on Schools Forum lead us to believe that. Okay, so I'm going to take the first proposal then, which is that we agree to the transfer of 0.5% of the schools blocks DSG to the high needs block DSG. So all those in favour of that, please show by raising your hand.
Sorry, Phil,
yes.
Could I just interrupt just for a second, just to be clear on who can and can't vote?
Yes.
So the vote relates to anyone here that is representing a school, an academy, or a multi-academy trust, obviously, and PVI representatives.
Right.
So I just want to make that really clear.
Okay, and somebody knows who those numbers are, do they?
Sorry, what's that?
Somebody knows who those numbers are?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just as a note there, Pamina, other than officers, there is nobody here in attendance who can't vote.
Ah, excellent. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, Alison. No, she's thought better of it. Okay, right, so I'll put that proposal again then.
No, sorry, I was just saying, how do you want us to vote? Do you want us to vote by raising a button, or?
I want you to use the raise hand function on your screen.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So the first proposal then is the agreement of transfer of 0.5% of the schools block DSG to the high needs block DSG. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that's five. That's five. Right. If you'd like to lower your hand, please. Right. Those against, please. Okay, that's 9. Are there any abstentions, please? No, is that the right numbers? Right, so that's right. So that's lost. Okay, so the next proposal I'm going to put then is the agreement to the transfer of 0.25% of the schools block DSG to the high needs block DSG. All those in favour of that, please show. Is everyone finished? So that again that's 6. you'd like to lower your hands, please. And those against. Okay, 8. Right, thank you. If you'd like to lower your hands. Jane, you've still got your hand up. Right, thank you. Right, the third proposal I'm going to put is agreement to the transfer of 0.125% of the schools block DSG to the high needs block DSG. So all those in favour of that, please show. Okay, that's 6. If you'd like to lower your hands, please. And those against. That's 9.
Eight.
8, thank you. Right, thank you. So that's lost as well. All right, thank you very much for your participation and the voting. Okay, so we'll now move on to item 4, matters for information and comment, which is the forward plan. Dalbir, please.
Thank you, Phil. The next meeting is on 11th of January and it's on Microsoft Teams. And there's 3 items for decision and 2 for comments and information. And also members can add any item to the agenda by sending the relevant information to school's funding email box. And any question they can ask, send email to that inbox as well. Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, just got a couple of things then. I'd like to thank Nick Evans for his contribution to the Schools Forum over the time that he's been on. Nick has tendered his resignation to us because of pressure of work, changes to his working arrangements, so he doesn't feel as though he can contribute as much as he would like now. So you will see a letter from an article from me, hopefully coming into Heads Up, appealing for people to fill those vacancies. I think we've got 3 or 4 vacancies to fill before next spring. So please keep out for that. Keep a lookout for that. I tender my apologies for the next meeting. Nikki will be chairing that meeting, so please be nice to her because I shall be away on the other side of the world for a while. I think that wraps up our activities for the day. So thank you very much for the debate. Thanks for the officers for your contribution to the reports, and particularly Ross for your presentation. And we'll see you all again soon. Have a good Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks,
Thank
Phil.
you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.